All right, hi everyone. My name is Kai, and I'm going to be co-hosting this today's webinar with you guys. We have a special guest, a very special guest, Cris Moras, aka Stuck on 3D. He's going to be presenting some stuff regarding iClone 7's new lighting enhancements, which are pretty cool. He's going to walk you through a lot of stuff, including GI, which is Global Illumination. We'll explore a lot about that later. So if you have no idea what GI is and you're kind of interested, this is the webinar for you. And we're going to be explaining this, or rather Cris is going to kind of be walking you through this stuff. So we're actually with a maxed out house today. We have a full webinar going on here. So apologies for those of you who are unable to get in here. But we are going to be recording this webinar. So if you have any questions, or we go too fast, or you miss something, feel free to, we'll be sending you a link later on, and you can feel free to check that out on your own time when we have time later. Yeah, so like I mentioned, you should be able to be seeing my screen right now. All right, if you can't see my screen, just mention that. I should be able to see my screen. Someone mentioned they can't see my screen right now. Okay, so yeah, we'll continue on. We're going to be switching over to Chris's screen momentarily here anyways. Yeah, so also we're going to be sending out a survey for this webinar. So if you guys have any questions or comments, any suggestions for future webinars, feel free to fill out that survey. And if you return that survey to us, we will be providing you with a $10 gift certificate for the content store. So you can spend your $10 to your heart's content in the content store there, and you can have fun with that. Also, we are going to have a question and answer section at the end of this webinar. So a small Q&A session, probably about, sometimes ranges between 10 to 20 minutes. So if you have any questions about the procedure that we're going through today, or you have questions about iClone 7 in general, feel free to put those in the questions section in the GoToWebinar panel there. There's a little question section. Make sure you don't put it in the chat section. Those are two different places. Put it in the questions section. I want to emphasize that. We have people that put it in the chat section before and they didn't get their questions answered. So you should put it in the questions section. And yeah, so we're going to basically be handing it over to Cris momentarily here. I'm going to unmute his microphone. So Cris, can you hear me there?
Yeah, sure can. Can you hear me?
Yes, all right. We have a secure connection with the audio. So we're going to be handing the reins over to Cris here. Just a little bit of an introduction before I get into things. Cris has been in the CG industry. He's a huge CG guy. He's been in the CG industry since age 12, since he went to Universal Studios and checked out The Last Starfighter, and I was wondering about how to do the space scenes, and that kind of piqued his inspiration and his interest into the field of CG, and since then he's kind of explored all major CG fields. He has a lot of great productions under his belt, ranging from the pilot of Star Trek Voyager, which won the Emmy for Best Special Effects. He's currently occupied with training videos, motion graphics, video games, motion rides, and he also has 13 animated films under his belt. 4 of those which have won Oscars. So he really knows his stuff. He works as a lighting consultant in a lot of those films, and he knows everything there is to know pretty much about lighting. So this is a pleasure to have him here with us. He's also, on top of that, been using iClone since iClone 2, which is actually longer than I've been using iClone. So he probably knows a little bit more about iClone as well. So it's a pleasure to have you here today, Cris. Thanks for coming with us. I'm going to switch the screen over to you so you can we can make you the presenter here. And
Sounds
so
good.
everyone's going to see your screen momentarily here.
All right, can you guys see it?
I'm still waiting on it right now. I see the blank screen. There we go. I can see it now.
Okay.
Awesome. All right, we're good to go.
Okay. All right.
So I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thank you, Kai. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our second webinar of the iClone 7 series. I'm super happy to be here once more and share with all of you iClone's spectacular new lighting features. As some of you know, lighting is one of my favorite areas of 3D animation, and the fact that I can render images with Global Illumination in real time is a dream come true. If you ever render a scene like this one, a software-based render, you know what I mean. it could easily take hours at HD resolution for a single frame, but in iClone it took me 2.5 seconds for final render, and in preview mode I can get upwards of 30 frames per second. Not bad at all. So let us take a quick look at what we're going to be covering today. So the first thing we're going to do is Global Illumination. What is it and why use it? The title just says it all. So let's move on to the next topic. GI basics. Here we'll talk about the very basics of the GI sliders for the UI, and then what elements contribute to the Global Illumination solution. After that, we'll talk about voxels. This is a technique that iClone is using to get those real-time global illumination. We'll explain what voxels are and how does GI uses them. After that, we'll go ahead and I'll show you step by step how I lit this Roman patio here, both daytime and the nighttime scene. And then once we're done with that, we'll have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, that will be the time to ask them. So let's move on because we have a ton of stuff to cover here. So global illumination, what is it and why use it? All right, so we're going to go use a very simple scene here. As you can see here, we have a cube, a sphere, and what we have, we're inside a box with just one opening. So let's, if you can take a look here, there's our box right there with that one opening right there, and there's one yellow wall right there in the back of the room. So let's go ahead and take a look from the inside of the box again. All right, so right now you notice here it says auxiliary light. This is a feature that was put here on purpose so that if you ever find yourself in a scene that is completely dark, this will allow you to put a light on it in the scene without actually adding a light to the scene. So it's a very handy feature in case you get lost or you forgot, you turn off all the lights just to test the GI or something like that. So a very, very useful feature. So let's go ahead and turn this auxiliary light off and actually show where the light is coming from. So we have a directional light that's coming right through the window and into the room. Now let's see what happens when we turn it on. Right now we have what is called direct lighting. That means that only the light can get through the window. I can touch a surface without being blocked by anything else. That's the light you're going to see. That's what is called direct lighting. As you can see here, you can see a little bit of yellow of the wall here, a little bit of yellow of the cube here, but not the sphere. The sphere is being blocked by the cube. So there is no direct lighting hitting that sphere. Now let's talk about global illumination. What is global illumination? Global illumination, or sometimes called indirect lighting, is the action where the direct light hits a surface and illuminates another surface without the intervention of that direct lighting. So let's turn GI on and see what happens. Look, beautiful. This is your instant beautify button right there, global illumination. Notice here as the light source, which is a white light source. Let's see over here real quick. See, it's pure white. It bounces right off the wall, which is a yellow wall. Notice that when it bounces off the wall, it picks up a little bit of the color from that wall and it bounces it onto the ceiling, on the walls, and the floor. That is what global illumination is all about. And not only that, it bounces multiple times. You just can't see it, but you will see this in a second what I mean. Here is very subtle over here. Let me turn the writing off. What's happening here, you have direct light bouncing off the wall, so you're getting a little bit of yellow here on the sphere. However, the sphere is white, so that the ray is also bouncing off the sphere, and you're getting a little bit of white here on the floor. That's because the light does bounce, bounce, bounce. It goes many bounces around the room to get this beautiful lighting here. And that is what GI is all about. So let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and make things a little more interactive. And I'm going to go ahead and start moving this sphere and taking it out of the shadow. Look what happens here. As the direct lighting starts hitting it, all of a sudden those rays start bouncing off the sphere and into the ceiling right there. And the more we get in front of the window, and if we try to scale this, for example, and make the sphere bigger, notice that, of course, we have less yellow here because direct lighting is not hitting the top part, it's only hitting the bottom. And you're only getting that hint of yellow just at the bottom there, just because everything is in shadow. There's no direct lighting hitting the top part. And this is a very important point. There is no indirect lighting without a direct light source hitting somewhere. So remember that. So if you ever find yourself turning the GI on and see why nothing's happening, probably because you don't have any direct lighting happening. That's why. If you turn GI will not give you any kind of light source unless you make a surface a light emitting surface, which we will talk about later. All right, so this about covers our global illumination, what it is and why use it. Look at this. You are getting all this beautiful stuff just for free. Let's see a few more examples about that. Once again here, let's take a look at this room. This room over here, it has is a closed room where only the sun can filter through it. And this is our direct light source. And look what happens when we turn on GI. Light rays starts bouncing off the walls, and you get this light, beautiful, warm colors here simply because the floor is warm, and that's where the direct light hit that surface first. And now it's bouncing off the walls and everywhere else where the walls are a little bit yellowish too, so you're getting this beautiful warmth. Let's see another example now. Here is similar situation. Lighting, warm light coming from the sun from this direction, and skylight coming from the back of the screen over here. And let's go ahead and turn Global Illumination on. Look at this beautiful lighting. You're getting this for free. This is amazing how beautiful you can make a scene just with a push of a button. Now, look at this, the lighting here on the characters. You get this beautiful, nice rim lighting, and this is happening because the light source, the direct light source, is bouncing off the counter and hitting the face right there. Same thing with the alligator, the belly and the chin. Look what happens over here. It's completely dark. You don't have any lighting whatsoever from direct light source. Now we turn this on, and the lighting that's bouncing off the floor and off the counter on the side here is hitting the chin and the belly. Just beautiful. Let's see another example. Here we have just a sunlight, a direct light hitting this area. Now let's turn GI on. Beautiful. We added a few more things over here. I will show you exactly what I did to make this beautiful scene, but that's our last tutorial. So let's move on to the next topic, which is GI basics, UI, and the elements that contribute to it. All right, so let us load another scene just to get started. So we'll start from scratch here. Oh my God, what happened here? I'm just kidding with you. I was just showing you again the auxiliary light. I did that on purpose. I turned off all the lights just on purpose, just so you could see that. You can actually see the silhouette here, but sometimes if you have a scene that is completely engulfed with geometry, you might see completely black, but you know there's geometry there. So again, auxiliary light, very useful and handy tool to see your scene without adding any extra lights to your scene. So let's go ahead and turn on GI. In this particular instance, we're seeing light that is all GI lit. And by that, I mean, how come? I thought GI, you need direct lighting, right? Well, when you turn on GI, you have a feature called light emitting surfaces. So let's take a look at those. These are surfaces that actually, you can tell them to go ahead and emit a light source. So let's go ahead and turn that on. Let's make it visible. And let's take a look at the scene. Now, we are seeing it from the front view, and you're seeing a little bit of red and a little bit of green over here and a hot spot or floodlight over here behind the red sphere. So let's take a look at it from a different angle, from the back. Over here are the light emitting surfaces that we used. This is emitting the green and the red, of course. And iClone has multiple features to allow you to use light emitting surfaces. You could use a straight up a diffuse color. You don't even have to have a texture for it. Or you can use, here, let's switch the angle here, and you can use actually a light that has a surface that has a texture, and it will acquire the same color of that texture. Now, the reason here is invisible is because this object is set as a dummy with emit GI on. It's a special feature, enhancement feature that iClone has for global illumination. Now let's turn that off so we can see the source. And let's turn off the spotlight in the center. I will show you why I use that later on. Now, there's our beautiful emissive light here. And let's go to the surfaces, because this is the materials, because this is very important. Now, to have a light emitting surface, you need to go to GI settings over here, GI settings, and have illumination on, and you got to have the glow and self-illumination scale on. Now, two things you require. You either require self-illumination or you require a glow. Right now we have a very dim glow, and I'm going to go ahead and crank it up so you can see what's going on here. That's 100% glow. Now, I added that because I wanted just the center to have a hot spot. Look what happens when I don't have that glow. It's just evenly lit, even though it's cranked up to 100%. Of course, we could double right click over here and adjust the color to get more intense light, but it's all done evenly. So that's not what we want to play with right now. So what I did is I added a glow, just a little bit of glow, so that the center is a little bit hotter. I hope you can see that. There we go, like that. All right, now look what happens when I turn self-illumination completely off. Now that hotspot that was on the floor is completely gone, but you do get still a little bit of illumination, because glow also is a component that actually contributes to the GI solution. Now let's crank it up so you can actually see that. There you go. Now you can see here how it's hitting this red wall over here, and it's hitting the floor. It's not as intense as an image, but the glow does give you a very nice effect to things. So for me to balance things out, what I decided to do was, okay, I want the center to be hot, but I want the image to be my actual light source. So I went ahead and cranked up self-illumination. All right, so so you cannot use surface color or diffuse color to light it. You can use a texture. And what else? There's one more feature that you can use. I'm going to turn my emissive lights off, and I'm going to turn on a different type of emissive light. This is actually a surface. However, the surface, instead of a texture, it actually has a movie attached to the base color. And this is how you can create like a TV effect or a special effect, anything you can think of, pretty much. So it's the self-illumination is there, as you can see here. And you can crank this all the way up, and look what happens when we turn this on, we play it on. The lighting actually switches and moves to the frame of the image of that animation. So it's a very useful feature to simulate like a moving screen or a TV. And who knows what else you can come up with. So there are many, many uses. So, and also one thing is, if you scale this, it will illuminate the scene proportionally as well. Look how much more lit that scene is, simply by scaling, not increasing the intensity, but scaling. This is because of the voxels are getting bigger, and those bigger voxels are emitting more light. But we'll talk about voxels on the next tutorial. So for now, let's just let you know that it is possible to actually have not just the texture, but actually moving pictures attached to the surface to emit the light source. So let's take a look at what else contribute to the GI solution or global illumination solution. As we know already, a directional light. So we tried that already on our first demo over there. Very simply, we have a directional light, and I'm going to go ahead and press my slash key, and I'm going to rotate this around like so, as you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my GI settings, global illumination. I'm going to increase the bounce a little bit so you can see, we can exaggerate a little bit more of that bounce. So what's happening here is directional light is hitting the sphere and then hitting that floor right there. Same thing over here is hitting this wall over here of green, and it's lighting this situation over here. Look what happens when we rotate the scene again. I'm going to slowly rotate this. Now this is bouncing a little bit more red over here on the floor, and so forth. So we know directional lights are a very good source of direct light source that contributes to the global illumination. Next, let's go ahead and try some spotlights. Here's a very bright spotlight, and we are lighting the whole scene, even though the light is actually white. Because it's bouncing off the surface, it's illuminating the whole scene red. Same thing over here. I'm going to do the same thing, but with a green light, like so. Now we have the whole scene lit by one light source, which is white, bouncing off that green card. This is pure bounce lighting you're seeing here. Absolutely beautiful. So spotlights, yes, definitely contribute to the global illumination. So let's see what else contributes to global illumination. Another thing that does is actually image-based lighting. So let's turn that on, like so. And right now it's very faint over here. So what I'm going to do is two things. I'm going to select the floor, go into my materials, and I'm going to make sure that my material is not shiny. I'm going to make it super rough. And if you don't know what this is all about, roughness and metallic, I would definitely encourage you guys to watch the part 1 webinar where I talked about PBR. So roughness is basically how shiny things are. When it's pure black, it's super shiny. When it's pure white, it's super dull. So let's make the surface dull right now. So the reflections don't contribute to anything here. This is like super dull surface, and we can see the global illumination a little bit better there. All right, so there we go. So one thing to notice is that you have to have that checkbox, GI indirect lighting, on if you want to see any indirect lighting. Otherwise, global lighting, image-based lighting will not illuminate, it will not be on at all. So make sure that little checkbox is on. I'm going to go ahead and crank up my GI here so you can see the bounce a little bit better. So how does this work, right? So the way this works is it will take the brightest area of that IBL or HDR image, in this case this opening in the leaves right here, and I'm going to go ahead and show you that, make this visible, and I'm going to press Shift-I to bring my widget over here, and notice that as I rotate this around, the strongest source of bounce, it's coming from the brightest area of that image-based lighting or HDR. So right now, the brightest area is behind the camera. Now let me show you, I'm going to sync the orientation of the image with the image-based lighting or HDR so you can see this better. So I'm going to rotate this around. So you'll see that now the brightest area is pointing towards us. So you can see the bounce, the strongest bounce coming from behind the objects. That's because the hottest area, that's where it's coming from. So GI absolutely definitely contributes to the global illumination solution, but you have to have that checkbox on. Otherwise, it's just pure it's just pure image-based lighting. All right, so what else contributes to this solution? Now let's turn off the sky because we don't need it right now. All right, turn this off. Super. All right, so what else contributes to GI or global illumination? One thing that does is actually particles. So I'm going to go ahead and put this particle torch fire in here, and I'm going to just move it around a little bit, get it in front of us, and up in front of the sphere here so you can see it better, like so. All right, now let's play it a little bit. And oh, what happened? In order to make it work, you have to make sure that the particles in the modify panel, you go to GI settings here, and you got to have illumination on. Now let's do a pre-roll right now, and go ahead and play it again, and you'll see what happens. Beautiful. Look at that. This is being lit by the actual particles, and because the particles move, you're going to get a beautiful, nice flicker, and this is all coming from the GI solution. You can also control the strength of the fire, of how much light that emits from those particles to the rest of the scene. It's just incredible. The effects you get, explosions, just imagine the possibilities here. Absolutely gorgeous. So I think that will about cover it. We talked about light emitting surfaces like this. Whoa, super bright. Let's take that global illumination down because remember we bounced it. We put the bounce strength way up. So let's take that down over there. There we go. Fantastic. That looks pretty nice. So we have light emitting surfaces. We have direct light sources, directional lights, spotlights, and of course, we have IBLs or image-based lighting that contribute to GI, and particles. All of these components will allow you to make one beautiful image and scene. All right, so it's time to move on to the next topic. which brings us to what are voxels and how does GI uses them. So think of voxels as a cubical world, kind of like Minecraft, but instead of building your scene with cubes, which by the way, ironically, I do have a cube here, but any item that you have in your scene, iClone will turn it into a cube. So let me go ahead and just take this GI setting a little bit down because this is way too bright again, and there you go. That's much better. So how can we visualize this? There's a little icon over here that it says View GI Voxels, and look at that. That is, I'm going to take these two planes, the red and the green that we had that were emitting surfaces, because right now it's blocking the view. So let's take those things off, make those invisible. Wrong cards. This guy's over here. All right, so here's my red. There we go. And there's my green. Let's get those things. We want the warm. Where's my red light? Here, no, green light. No. Hello. There it is. Sorry. All right, so here we go. Oh, notice here that we actually get to see the glow lighting for this particular light source, light emitting surface, and you can actually see this in action. This is kind of a neat feature here. Look at the intensified, the voxels. You can see how the voxels are getting hotter and hotter in here. One thing to notice here is how the voxels are much smaller over here, and here they're super thick. Why is that? Well, in order for iClone to be able to visualize this or actually keep things in real time, it has to use what is called an anchor. This anchor over here is where all of the resolution is going to be concentrated around, and what's happening is it's going to be super dense over here around the anchor, but as it goes further away, it will get block here and block here and block here. So you see the little stair stepping going on here. This is because the voxels, even though it's just the plane we're seeing here, this is just flat plane, but we are seeing this voxels in stair step mode because the further away, remember, the bigger the voxels get. So you get this super thin ones, cubes, and they get thicker, thicker, and thicker, and thicker. Now look what happens here as I move the anchor. Now the sphere is super high resolution right now. Look at all those little cubes over here. Now, as we move it away from it, notice how those cubes are getting thicker, but here they're getting much finer. So like I said, anywhere around the anchor, that's where your highest resolution is going to be. So this is where you want to have the most accurate GI solution. So put it there at a point of interest in your scene that you want, to show off that GI. So what else we can do with this? Well, we can see what we can control the GI range, but in order to see that, let us go and pull back a little bit the scene here. I'm going to go super back down over there, and I'm going to view GI range. Now what we're seeing here, it's the volume where all those voxels are created. So as we increase or decrease the volume here, like so, and now I'm going to go ahead and go close in, back to the front camera. Notice that as I increase the range, as I increase that volume, the voxels are getting thicker and thicker and thicker. This is because it needs to compensate for that huge volume. So if you have a huge scene, it's really not to your advantage to cover the whole scene with the volume that or the voxels are going to be made in. You're much better off having a volume that is being covered, that covers everything that the camera can see, like so, but not so much that actually it goes too far and then all of a sudden you're just losing the lighting, the GI lighting. Now let me go ahead and show you what I mean by that. Now, as we decrease the range, there is no GI, and now as I increase it, notice how the bounce starts to take effect. So it's in your best interest here is just to optimize your volume always and that way you will get your best GI solution. One thing also that you can do, and let's go to our project settings here, you have two types of modes. You have low resolution mode and you have a high resolution mode. This is 8 times more voxels. So take a look at this scene over here. As I click that, look how much finer that is. Of course, you're going to get a lot more detail from the Global Illumination. However, the cost is going to be more memory. Notice as I go back and forth between low res and high res, how the memory increases and jumps up. So it more than doubles. So be careful if your video card does not have a lot of memory. Another nice feature you have is suppress light flicker. And this is if you have a camera that's moving through a very long scene. What's going to happen is, first of all, if you move out of the GI volume, you're not going to get any GI in this area over here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead real quick and select my environment. I'm going to use my move key here, and I'm going to press Control, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the whole scene to the side. So now I'm going to go over here. There we go. So right here, there's no volume, no GI whatsoever. So let's go back to the front frame here. Let's start from here, for example, and frame 100 here. And let's move the camera to over here. All right, let's move this over here to 100. All right. So let's start the motion there. You will notice that as we move away from the GI solution. So there's a feature that you can actually use is you can actually link it to the camera. So when you move, the anchor moves with you. So this GI solution will move with you as well. Now we'll cover this in more advanced topics, but I just wanted to let you know that this was actually a feature, a very useful feature you could do for animation. So what's next in our agenda? Let's move on. So our next topic is going to be GI in action, which is basically lighting this Roman patio. Let's get started. All right. So let's bring in that scene in real quick. All right. Look at this beautiful, colorful scene. Look at those earth tones and that crystal blue water. I'm just messing with your head. Actually, that's a grayscale image. And I just wanted to show you guys a brand new feature from horizon-based ambient occlusion. This is a visualizer. And actually, you can see that what that ambient occlusion looks like without the geometry. So the sliders are pretty simple. It will blend how much you can put on top of the geometry, like so. On, off, there we go, like so. You can see the strength. You can control the strength. So it's the strength of how much ambient occlusion you have where the objects intersect. There we go, 100, 0, 100. Next, range. The range is how much spread from the actual geometry intersection you're going to get. So the higher the range, the more spread. The lower the range, the less spread. So less spread, more spread. There we go. It's up to you. It's all an artistic choice here. Next, sharpness. Sharpness allows you to see a little bit better when objects are in front of other objects. Right now, you can see the ambient occlusion is very blurry. Look what happens when we increase the sharpness. Now you can see the leaves one by one, and actually the statue separates much better from the back from the arches over here. So it's again an artistic choice, and I wouldn't tweak too much of this until after you're done with your lighting. Then add in or more ambient occlusion as you need it. And finally, the bias, which is basically taking the less bias, the more detail you see on the ambient occlusion from the bump maps or normal maps, and the higher the bias, the less detail you see on the surface. You only see where the intersections happen. So that's about it. That's all I wanted to cover because it's very simple to use. So let's get to the actual lighting of the scene, shall we? So let's go ahead and start with the scene. So how do I light a scene? The first thing you got to find out is what time of day am I going to light this scene in? So I was thinking maybe 1:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. So I put my sun over here diagonally because if it was noon, the sun would be straight down, and that's not very complimentary to the statue. I wanted some direct lighting hitting that statue. So that's step number one. Step number two is remember, there is no indirect lighting without direct lighting. And right now what we're missing, because look at how dark the shadows are here, we're missing light that would be coming from the sky. Because not only the sun illuminate the scene, but actually skylight actually directly hit those surfaces as well. Now, for me, I could have used a directional light, but actually I prefer much more to use a spotlight. Why a spotlight? Because spotlights, unlike directional lights give you very strong shadows, very sharp shadows. Whereas a spotlight, you can actually increase the radius of that spotlight to very high. Let's go ahead and select our, turn it on here. To very high, I have a very, actually very wide angle. Now, the bigger the angle, the more soft the shadow gets. Now, look what happens when I turn off that direct lighting. Look how nice and soft those shadows are. And this is because I've been playing around with the shadow angle, with the spotlight angle. Look what happens as I turn it back up, turn it back down the angle. Look how sharp that is. Now, there is a limit here of 150, but actually you can crank this all the way to 179 if you want to. So 178 looked fine for me, so I'm going to go ahead and leave this as is. And then I noticed, oh my God, how come the skylight is not reaching those back walls? Technically, it's coming from everywhere and every angle, this direction, that direction. I hope you can see my mouse well here. So let's go ahead and increase the range, because right now it's not reaching all the way back there. So let's increase the range intensity. There we go. Now it's looking at the sky is actually lighting that scene. Now look what happens when I turn GI on. It looks like a beautiful night overcast scene. That's exactly the kind of lighting you want. Now let's turn this off again, and let's turn our directional light back on, which is our sun, and let's see how that contributes to the whole GI solution. Look at that, beautiful. So now we have our direct light source, which is going to be the sun and the sky, and the rest is all is being lit by the global illumination. Things are bouncing off the surfaces to illuminate this back areas, this dark, technically it's these dark areas that the direct light cannot reach, right? Super dark over there. So one wonderful feature that you can use, and I'm going to go ahead and press B for my eyedropper and select this surface over here because I want to grab that tile surface, which is right there, tiling. And one thing, which is one of the new features and enhancements for global illumination, it's called light bounce strength. And this is how much bounce, how much strength that direct light is going to have after it bounces off the surface. So as we increase the modifier there, look at this back wall over here. I'm going to go ahead and crank it up so you can see the difference. There you go. Look at that. Look at that beautiful lighting that's happening that is not being lit by the actual sun. It's being lit by the bounce of the floor onto that wall. Beautiful. You're getting all of this for free. This is just amazing. I love these features. One of my favorite features. And not only that, you can do it per material. So you can fine-tune this scene to your heart's content. You can make this your masterpiece. Absolutely. So what else can we do in here? Now, we have this nice bounce happening here. Let's crank it up a little bit more, exaggerate a little bit more there. And I notice here that this trim is getting a little too dark, and I would like a little more bounce-like, but I can't increase it so much that it's going to hit from the floor all the way to the trims. So what do we do? All right, so here what I did is a nice little cheat, and this is what I used. I used just a simple plane. I'm going to go ahead and show you from the top view here and turn that on. So bounce trim, turn that surface on, and all it is just a plain surface from a primitive that I created. Very simple. I went here, surface, and when plane, that's all I did. I created that plane, and then I scaled it. And look what happens now from the point of view of the camera. First, it's a single-sided surface, so we can see it from this point of view. So it's great. And now what happens, look what happens when I turn it on and off here. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to turn it on. See how how you get a little bit of light happening at the trim, at the bottom of the trim. I'm going to go ahead and increase that more so you can see what I'm talking about. If you can't see it clearly on your screen, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to increase the light bound strength, just like I did with the floor. And see, we get more light over here under the trims of this beautiful Roman patio. Now, don't go too crazy, because otherwise you're going to be going through the wall and going to be lighting this back interior wall, which we don't want to do that. We just want to have a little bit of bounce right there under the trim. So that looks great. All right, so now we have some nice bounce under the trim. We have this nicely lit over here, but the water just doesn't look right. And I bet you didn't even know that was water, right? So let's turn the water off so you know this is what the tile should look like. So what happens to the water? Well, first of all, there are two things. The water is very reflective, and because we're using the PBR system here, and we know that in PBR you can't have true object-to-object reflections. You actually need an IBL to get reflections. So let's go ahead and turn the IBL on, so that we can see that water better. Let's see, let's then go ahead and turn on IBL. And you can see here, now you can start seeing right here in this bottom corner how the ripples get a little bit of reflective surfaces from the IBL. Now let's crank that up so we can see that water better. Like so. There we go, much better. Now we can see the water and its ripples, and it looks beautiful right there. Now, the surface under, which is our tile, looks a little dim, and this is because the water plane is actually shadowing that tile at the bottom. So what can we do about that? Now, what I did is I selected the water surface and I duplicated that surface and put it under this tile floor. And then what I did is I actually made that water an emissive surface. So look what happens when I turn that on. You can now see that tile a little bit better, but actually I want to crank this up more so you can see the effect. Now I'm going to crank up the self-illumination. So now you can see the bottom of that below the water. So now it looks much more realistic and a lot better. So now you have, but you don't want to do it so strong that it's overpowering your reflections. So let's go ahead and crank the self-illumination a little bit, about half of that. That's good. And maybe increase the self-illumination here like so. All right, that looks really good. All right, so now we have some very nice water. And remember, this is all because of the light emitting surface. This is actually emitting light from the bottom of the tile upwards, and it's illuminating that surface of those tiles. And not only that, it's also giving you a fake a little bit of a reflection from the water onto these walls as well. So there you have it. A beautiful daytime lit scene using some very intuitive and actually very smart enhancements for this kind of GI, for the GI solution. Now again, to have a light emitting surface, remember that you can use something what is called set as dummy, and as long as you have emit GI, these objects can be invisible but still use that GI solution to give you that global illumination. So a very powerful feature to light the scene with invisible objects if you want it. So very, very powerful. So next what we're going to do is we're going to transition to the nighttime scene. And how do we do this? Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure that that's on. My orientation and image here is on. And now I'm going to play this out for you so you can see what happens. Hopefully you won't start it too much because of the refresh rate. But here I'm getting a full 25 to 30 frames per second in real time here as this is happening. So we're going from daytime to full nighttime. And here for the nighttime, we're using two types of light sources. Light emitting surfaces, where particles as particle emission for GI contribution. We are also using baked IBLs, which is a feature that you can use in iClone. I'm going to show you here the daytime and nighttime IBLs. So this is our baked light time, so you can see the geometry baked onto the IBL, onto the sky IBL. Before that, it was just the sky. So I wanted that because I wanted the geometry that was baked in here to reflect on the pool. And this is how I was able to do that. For more details, just check out the first webinar. I go in detail for that. Now, this is our nighttime scene. I have a nice starry sky, again, with the torches lighting, as well as the emissive light sources over here. Notice one of them actually is not emitting light, but it's off over here. So how did this happen, this transition? Basically, all I did is I took my key light, which is our sunlight, and I simply animated it for 1.5 multiplier from a nice warm color all the way to the end over here to a purplish blue color with a low intensity. So I animated that over time. Same thing here with the nighttime features. I animated those so that those particular surfaces will be animated as well, so that you can see here. Right now my glow is at 50, but if I start the scene from from the start, right now the strength of the glow is 0. So I simply transition from one to the other over time. That's all there is to that. Also, for the night, going from daytime to nighttime, I used a feature called Add New IBL Clip. And this is a very, very cool feature because it allows you to transition from one IBL, from a daytime IBL here, and I'm trying to shrink here, to the nighttime IBL. And in here, over there, you can see how long the transition is going to be. So you can control here by dragging this slider over here, how long that transition is going to happen. Also notice here there's a little curve. I don't know if you can see that clearly, that it goes slope upwards. Now what's happening here is going from fast to slow. I'm going to reverse that curve. I'm going to right click on that and go transition curve, and then I'm going to go from slow to fast, because what I wanted to happen is to slowly transition from daytime, but then go faster and faster transition into that nighttime. So you can see a little bit more of that night sky. So I'm going to press F3 to take the timeline away, and I'm going to play that back again for you. So as we play this back, there we go. So it's transitioning into the nighttime. I don't know if you can see this smoothly or not. It's probably stuttering for you guys, but it's very smooth over here. And that's basically how I transition from one IBL to another. So you can actually do this time-lapse effect going on here. So what did I use here? Like I mentioned before, I use a light-emitting surface, and here I'm using mostly a glow for this particular feature. I didn't want to use the image as a for self-illumination, but look what happens. This particular geometry is not directional. And because the floodlight, I wanted the floodlight to be directional and not hit the back of the column, I went ahead and used the glow because you still get a little bit of illumination, but not so much that it's going to bleed through the back. And then what I did to this is I actually added a true spotlight in there. And that is what's actually illuminating the scene. So this is a very cool feature. Now, actually, iClone now has actually a new light source that is called a shadow caster. It's a light that doesn't emit light, it actually emits shadows. So you can combine your light emitting surfaces with this particular lights that only emit shadows to get better results for your shadows. So it's very, very cool feature to have. So, but in this particular situation, I actually needed the light, because look what happens if I turn it on and off here. You can see it illuminating the surface. There you go. So I actually needed those spotlights to work here because I couldn't use light emitting surfaces because it was lighting the back of my columns here, and I didn't want that. And then of course we have our particles here, which of course they also contribute to GI illumination, and it will flicker as the particles move, and die off. And again, you can get absolutely beautiful lighting going on too. So that was all there's to the nighttime scene. So what else can we do here? Now, there's one more feature under visuals that you can use. And this is what I call a LOT, or a lookup table. I'm going to turn that on. I don't know if you saw that shift happening here between the on and off. Notice how it goes bluer as I turn it on. Now, this lookup tables or LOTs are used on professional feature films to keep all the shots very consistent from shot to shot. And basically what it does is actually it switches the palette from one pixel color to another color of pixels. So for example, for my moonlight here, I have a little bit of contribution where it makes things a little bit bluer. So I'm going to go ahead and crank this up so you can see this more. Look at that. So it makes it much more bluer. That obviously makes it too fake because you would get some warm lighting coming from the torches, right? So that's why I put just enough to make the scene a little bit bluer, but not so much that it will overpower my torches. Same thing with the floodlights and so on. So for the daytime, I did the exact same thing. I used my desert sun. Notice here that as I turn it on and off, it went from a slightly cool green color to a much warmer color. This is what I'm using here. I'm using the desert sun lot and the warm colors lot. Look what happens when I crank up the warm colors here. It makes the scene much warmer. Obviously way too much, but you have full control over this, and again, you can make your scene absolutely gorgeous with this, with lots or filters. You can call them filters. You can test them out. Some people like to do this in post after they render their images, but you can go ahead and just test things out over here, how much you want, because everything here is in real time. So it's very easily, I'm going to go ahead and crank the desert sun here so you can see the effect to it. So it kind of gets that sepia tone look to it kind of thing. But again, I just wanted to add a hint of extra warmth, and that's exactly what I did here. So basically, I transitioned from the warm colors, and then when I wait to nighttime, those things actually just went down to 0. And I left a little bit of the sun here because of the torches. Remember, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of pre-roll here so the particles can run up. There we go. There you go, because the torches give a little bit of warmth there. So if I would have turned that completely off, it was giving me too much green going on there. I don't know if you notice here. Look at this part of the wall. It's a little bit greenish to it. But if I clink that up, it just warms it right back on. So just by tweaking those filters, you can use as many filters as you want, and you can have that scene looking as gorgeous as you want it. So it's totally up to you. And I think that's about it. I think we cover pretty much everything here. And right now is the perfect time to move on to our Q&A session. So if you have any questions, now's the time to do it. Thank you very much.
Right on. Thanks a lot, Cris. Yeah, like you mentioned, we're going to have a Q&A session right now. So if you have any questions about the procedure or iClone or Reillusion stuff, feel free to put that in the questions section. We already have a bunch of questions here to get to. So we'll get right into it in just a moment here. I also want to mention Cris did a webinar on the PBR render system, I believe, when was it? Last week of May?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing another one of that on June 13th. So for those of you who missed the first one, we're going to be repeating it on June 13th with Cris there as well. Yeah, just so those of you who are aware. So let's get to the questions. Okay, so first question here from Mark, asking what are the correct terms to use in lighting for animation film, key light, fill light, backlight? Is it right to move the light for each shot, or do you create continuity issues? Cris, maybe you want to approach that. Can you see the questions panel as well? You should be able to see it.
Let me see. No, I cannot see those questions on my panel.
I think he's asking about the correct terms to use for the main lights.
Okay, well that's very simple. All right, so the main light is your key light. That's the light source that's going to be the strongest in the scene. So that's your key light. Your fill lights are the lights that where your direct lighting can actually reach. Those are good for that. So it will fill up those shadow areas where otherwise would be. Let me just turn that my filters off here so it's a little more clear. There we go. So without that fill light, you cannot actually, your shadows will be way too dark. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my fill light off here and turn off as well my IBL, because right now it's also contributing to the lighting solution. There we go. So without that, you can't, you have to have a fill light. Otherwise, the key light alone is not going to be able, even with global illumination on, it's not going to be able to cover everything that you need. So it's very important that you use both a key and a fill. And then what happens is, if you have a character, you usually use what is called a rim light, which is light coming from behind the character to create a nice little rim coming from the opposite side of where the key is coming from. This is basically to give you a nice shape to the character. And then also there's called the bounce light, which is not just coming from GI, but actually a fake light or any direct light source that is faking bounce, so you're exaggerating things. So you can use planes, invisible planes, to bounce light off from, because you use that as well. So anything that will make your scene look good and cheat with it, you just cheat as much as you want to, because the bottom line is, if your scene looks beautiful, that's all that matters. It doesn't really matter if you go too crazy with extra planes. But what's important here is for continuity, and this is from shot to shot. You got to make sure that you match whatever key shot you're given or you create. So what happens usually in films is either myself or someone else creates a key shot, and then all the subsequent shots that are similar from that particular area of that scene needs to match up. So you can't go too crazy, but you can still make them beautiful. So it's whatever looks best.
All right, thanks for that. Yeah, I think it really depends on the scenario as well. I mean, if you're doing like portrait lighting or you're doing like a scene, there's a lot of different stuff to get into. I mean, we don't really have time because lighting is a huge, complicated thing, as you probably know.
Absolutely.
All right. So a couple of people saying hi from Spain, hi from Berlin. So hi to Francisco and Bernd.
Hola, hola.
And okay, let me just get to this next one here. It's pretty long. Oh, that guy left actually. Okay. He's just mentioning about the difference between iClone 7 and Indigo. I think we can safely say that the visuals that you get in iClone 7 with the PBR and the global illumination and everything like that, you get fairly close to
absolutely,
yeah, to Indigo. And if you want super photorealistic stuff with refractions inside of the object, like a gem or a diamond or something, you'll want to spend time rendering Indigo. But I think at this point, technology has advanced to the point where yeah, you're going to have pretty much cover 90% of your bases with the iClone 7 now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So, all right. Okay. So, Deborah, just kind of unrelated question here. She's having a hard time converting clothing and props that she creates in Blender and characters from DAZ into iClone. So, will there be a webinar for that? We could possibly think about doing a webinar on that, Deborah. Make sure you fill out the survey at the end of the webinar. We'll send to you in email. If you send your request via that method, I think we've had people request this in the past. Now, the thing about converting the clothing from props from Blender, at this point we're kind of evolving that pipeline right now. So we're going to be releasing some new kind of workflows, I guess, in the next little while here. As far as specifically when that'll be, I'm not totally sure. But I think we're kind of holding off for the next couple of months until we develop that workflow, and then we'll have a whole bunch of webinars on that, Deborah. So for now, you can just email me as far as that's concerned. I know a little bit about converting characters and stuff and props from iClone, from DAZ rather, into iClone. So just give me a shout. It's kai@reallusion.com, Kai at reallusion.com. All right, so hopefully that answers, well, partially answers your question. We can get into more detail later with the email. Okay, so same question with Deborah. Which render engine are you using? We're just using iClone's rendering, iClone 7's rendering.
Yeah, straight up.
You're not cheating, are you, Chris, over there?
No, no.
Kind of CG magic to
yeah, this image right here. It's all iClone. There is no software-based renderers. I hate how long they take. I got to tell you, now that I have GI and in iClone. I don't even know why I would want to go to that, except again, if I have to be super accurate with refractions and all that kind of stuff, but for gems and so forth. But otherwise, why even go there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at all the how far technology has advanced, even with global illumination and stuff like that for real-time engines.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Engines like Unreal use it, and CryEngine. You can check those out as well. Lots of videos on YouTube. You can see the visual quality you can achieve with that. And now we have it with iClone 7. Awesome. All right. So next question here from Ken Sonvico. Can I use the self-illumination feature on a character to simulate a ghostly effect to the figure? What do you guys say to that?
Oh yeah, you can. You can add some transparency to it, and actually, yeah, you can. It is possible. I've
I'm
done it.
thinking maybe add a glow map, To the you can add a glow map to the
Yeah,
characters.
you can add a glow map, and you can use both self-illumination and glow, and add a little bit of transparency to the actual. But you got to do it actually to the material, not to the not the opacity on the slider. So don't touch that. Actually, just add it to the actual material opacity. And if you do that, then you can have a ghostly image and make it feel like it's a little ghost going on there. Or a hologram if you want to create something like that. It is possible.
Here's a quick side question. So in terms of self-illumination and glow maps, what would the difference be as far as GI is concerned?
Well, as it turns out, you can actually, if you have a glow map, you can actually see the glow map on the voxels here, so you can see where that's happening. However, glows are much, the contribution is smaller than the base color, so that's something to keep in mind. It's less intense.
So you say for a stronger effect, you'd want to try self-illumination as opposed to glow.
Yes, exactly. The glow will give you some contribution, like I showed here on my scene here, but it's not going to be as strong as the image, as the base color texture.
Yeah, one advantage of glow, I think, that I can just think of right off the bat is you can change the color of the glow map as well. So you can make.
Well, you can do that with the image as well.
So self-illumination?
Yeah. Let's see. Not that.
Oops.
Okay, so you can change the saturation. So, and the hue.
Oh, this of the diffuse map, yeah, base color map. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so you can do that too.
The old workaround. This new adjust color panel is new with iClone 7. We're not used to that yet.
Again, yeah, beautiful. Actually, very cool feature. Double right click on the actual image here on the icon, and it will bring the UI for you. Or you can, of course, just click here on and off. But I just love it's much faster. Double right click here. Very nice feature. So yeah, absolutely. You can use either the image or that. And like I said, you can also use video if you need to. And you can attach a video to the base color, and that will make it flicker like a TV or a film screen.
Yeah, maybe even something like a water video or something like that. If you put that in the glow channel, you get like kind of an eerie glow, glowing.
You could have some kind of like, for example, like some kind of caustic effect. So you can have the rippling happening on the water. So that happens as the water refracts onto the floor. So you can have something like that happening and use that as an emission, and you could have that onto the wall. So again, very, so you can go crazy with the things you can do right now in iClone.
Awesome. All right, so let's move on to the next one since we're kind of limited for time here. We got a question from Subdiacon asking, is NVIDIA VXGI necessary? I have two NVIDIA 1080 that aren't supported for the moment. How do they perform with iClone 7 GI? What's your setup over there, Chris?
Right now I'm using Titan X card. That's why I have 12 gigabytes of memory, and I use it all the time because I love GI, and if you love GI, yeah, the more RAM you have on your video card, the better. Of course, you can limit yourself by using the low-res voxels, but I usually like to light my thing with a high-res one simply because it gives me a more accurate solution. And basically, each voxel or cube, it takes the information from, if it lands, for example, here, imagine here a cube that covers this part of the sphere. It's going to average whatever pixels are on that surface of the sphere into that one cube, and it's going to meet that one color. So the smaller the cube, the more accurate the GI solution. So the bigger the cube, obviously, the more averaging it does, so the less accurate it becomes. So it's really up to you how much you want to use GI, or if you want to just as like a little hint of bounce light, then low res will be great for you. But if you really want to fine tune that scene, the high voxel GIs is the way to go. But again, only use it when you're tweaking your lighting, your final lighting. Otherwise, stay low res so you can animate and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, when you're doing all your work, stay low res for sure. It just
Yes.
saves resources.
Yeah. Yeah, only turn it on high res if you're gonna actually finalize your images and start rendering the final images.
Yeah, good point. I think with twin 1080s, you should be fine.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Actually, since iClone does not work in SLI, so 1080 will do the job.
Right. Yeah. We may update to make that compatible a little bit later. Although I can't really say anything, but you know, we're always working hard to improve. Maybe iClone 7.1 or 7.2. We'll see. Okay. So, question from David. Can you explain what the Use sRGB button does?
Use sRGB. Are we talking PBR stuff?
That's, yeah, I think it might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So this is talking about color space, and basically what happens is when you have an image that is not in the same color space as your PBR setup, it's going to tend to be overblown. See how much stronger that becomes? So basically, use sRGB. It kind of normalizes the intensity. That way, it gives you a more accurate representation for the physically based rendering.
Right. Yeah. It's tied into physically based rendering. Use sRGB. They have a similar thing in Unreal. If you're using you know, PBR textures, they recommend, you know, toggling that on. Without it, you know, you don't have to use the sRGB. I think that it's, yeah, like you mentioned, you pretty much explained it pretty well. We also have that thing in Unreal, and I'm not sure, probably Unity as well. I'm not sure if you've found that in Unity either.
Yes, you have to. Otherwise, the PBR is not going to work correctly.
Yeah.
You're going to get things very, very overblown for no particular reason because the textures are not being normalized.
Exactly. So basically, as a general rule, when you're using PBR textures, use sRGB.
Yes. If it's not HDR, yes, you use that.
Okay.
If it is an HDR image, then you don't have to.
Okay. Good to know. So one question from Rodrigo asking, how does the number of cones affect GI?
Actually, that will give you a much more accurate solution. So here, right now, look at this as I turn the dial all the way down. This will give you, it kind of lowers the grid, the overall grid of your volume. So it's putting less cones on that big volume that I mentioned before here, remember? That box that I was talking about. So let's go over here and go ahead and let's visualize that. Let's bring out the settings here. See this volume here? So basically, increasing the cones, it gives you more subdivisions for the solution of the GI beyond just the voxels. So each cone, it has a set of voxels. So the more cones, the more accurate that GI solution is going to become because it has more. It will put more voxels into those cones. So that's basically the way it works. And you can actually go all the way to 64, by the way. So you can go super tight in a high resolution. So, however, I don't recommend that unless you have a very powerful video card. So, very, very important.
I was going to say that's a little bit of overkill there.
Yeah. So again, but this one actually takes away some of that grid-looking things on the shadows. You know, just again, use it only between that and the shadow bias. You can get some pretty decent results. So you don't have to go too crazy with the voxel cones. But I will talk about this in a more advanced tutorial for GI. This was basically just the basics for GI.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot more parameters and combinations that you can use to tweak your GI
Absolutely.
results. Yeah.
There is diffuse and there is both specular bounce. So that specular bounce applies only to shiny objects. So if I turn that off, look what happens. The spotlights, those surfaces, the red and green surface that I had coming from behind the camera are not there. Now I turn it on. Now it's there. So one thing though that actually I forgot to mention, and actually it's a cool thing to use, is when you're using specular bounce, you can have a sort of pseudo real-time object-to-object reflection, but it's not really using the objects, it's using the voxels to create that reflection. So let me go ahead and just quickly turn on the visualizer off here so we can see the scene, turn the GI on, and let me select the water here and turn on my lights real quick. So we have all the lights that we need, the skylight here, and let's increase the range there a little bit, and there we go. We have nice soft shadows. We also go to the HDR real quick, turn that on. Okay, so I'm going to crank that up so we can see that on the water. Okay, so now we have some nice speculars coming from the IBL, but look what happens when we actually play with the specular bounce. You can actually see the pots being reflected, the columns, and this is all playing with detail. Again, I'm going to go again into much more detail in advance, but you can actually get some kind of real-time object-to-object reflection. This is not the object. These are the voxels representing the objects that are being reflected on the surface. So you can actually simulate some reflective surfaces with the specular bounce on the GI solution. So again, something very, very cool, but I'm going to cover this again on more advanced tutorials.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a good little teaser there.
Yep.
Okay, so that answers a question we had from Rodrigo about going over the specular tracing section briefly. So question from Pedro asking, when you're creating a space scene, how would you simulate sunlight, moonlight, and planet light if you're using an IBL image as the background?
Well, actually, you could, and this is super cool because you can use all the features that iClone has. You can use the bake IBL, so you can start off with a simple sky with just stars, and then you can build your own sun, so a sphere, and you make that a light-emitting surface. You crank up the glow on that, so you have your bright sun, and then you can create a moon on the other side of the sphere of the sky, on the opposite side, for example, and make the moon that being simulating that is being lit by the sun. And then what happens is you go ahead and use a feature called Bake IBL, and by doing that, you can actually bake that onto your HDR image, so you'll have the sky, the sun, and the moon, and those are going to be your sources of illumination for whatever object is in the middle of that IBL. So very, very cool dynamics that you can have, and super powerful. I mean, I went over a big IBLs on the first webinar, but I think we're going to have another one soon, I think next week. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would definitely recommend you checking that one out, because I talk about IBL baking there as well.
Awesome. All right. We had a question from Chris asking if you offer training classes for iClone.
I sure do.
Cool. How can people, how should they reach you?
Actually, they can reach me at stuckon3d@gmail.com, and that way they can get a hold of me.
Cool. All right, there you go, Chris. Stuckon3d@gmail.com. You can contact Chris for the training classes there. All right. We are recording this to answer another person's question, and we will be providing you with the recording later on. Okay, so Robert is asking about, is there any low-level tutorials or information sources which can help us help novices with become more related to iClone lighting fundamentals? Yeah, Robert, we probably will be having some tutorials released with iClone 7, some very basic ones that kind of go through the basics. I'm actually producing a bunch of those right now as well. So those will be available, I think, upon launch or shortly after, within the next month. So yeah, they'll just be like short videos going over the basics, Robert. So make sure you check out our YouTube channel, and we should have a bunch of those available later on as well. I think maybe you're doing some more advanced ones, Chris.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Actually, I think for lighting, I'll be going through the full spectrum, so super easy to all the way tweaking advanced voxels. So
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. So Peter's mentioning here when I'm not really sure about the. It says when to IBL versus area light with image texture. I'm not really sure. What's the difference between IBL versus area light with an image texture?
well, the difference is IBLs will illuminate your object from all angles, including the floor and the bottom, from the bottom, whereas an IBL texture surface emitting light emitting surface is more directional. So it all really has to do with what kind of lighting are you looking for. Again, like for example, this patio, as you notice here, I actually baked the geometry onto my IBL so I can have the influence of that lighting of the geometry illuminating the statue here. So it is not only being used in the reflection of the water, it's actually affecting the statue's lighting and the walls over here, everything inside that scene, because the lighting is coming from everywhere. What would happen is with the IBL, for example, if it's just a plain sky image, you would get skylight coming from the bottom, which in reality you wouldn't get because the objects are occluding it. This is one of the main reasons why you would use baked lights, baked IBLs actually.
Great. So
So,
that actually answers the next question from Gary saying, how did you make the IBL you used for, did you bake them in iClone?
yes, absolutely. So it's one of the features here. Here, bake IBL, and then what you do is you simply load the IBL that you want to use in here, and then I go through a full-on tutorial for this on the webinar, on the first webinar. But basically, you bring it in here. You click this to keep your source if you're going to be doing first time test to make sure everything's working, and then you can check it off, and then you can do multiple bakes, a bake on top of a bake to get the best possible lighting. Actually, it's very cool tricks that you can use. I will put those are actually will be on the first webinar. But yeah, you can totally do it within iClone, and you can actually set up the resolution all the way to 16K. 8K, 4K, so it's up to you how much memory your card have. I wouldn't recommend going beyond 8K because for IBLs, actually, unless you're seeing it as part of the texture, IBL lighting does not require very high resolution unless you're using it for reflections, of course. So 4K is usually a good number to have when you bake your images.
How long would it normally take you to bake a 4K image there?
Actually, that took, 5 to 10 seconds for the full bake with the geometry. And not only that, I had GI turned on, so it's actually it's actually baking the solution with the GI lit geometry, so you get the best possible IBL you could get. It's really fantastic. So you can see here the bounce that I intensify the bounce coming from the floor onto the wall that like I showed you on the tutorial. So this is all, with GI on, and it's baking that onto the IBL. So now you have true lighting coming from, for that scene.
Excellent. Okay, so next question from David. What are the video card requirements for using GI? I think we have this on our product page, the iClone 7 product page.
Yeah, I would recommend a 970 at least, a 1070, I'm sorry, GTX, with 8 gigs. I mean, you can use a 4 gigabyte card, but again, that will really limit you if you really want to use GI to its fullest, because GI does consume quite a bit of memory. See, right now for this scene, it's 3.5 gigabytes of memory being used. So you're really pushing the limit there if you have a 4 gig card.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so generally you want a pretty recent generation of video cards, to be honest.
I could switch this to a lower resolution, so it uses less memory. But again, it's all how much juice you want to pull out of that GI.
Yeah, right. I'd say at least, like you said, 1070, 1080 GTX, right?
Yeah, I mean, the 1070 is actually pretty inexpensive now because of the GTX Ti that came out lately. So
Mhm.
uh, they've got down in price a lot.
All right, good to know for all of you out there who are looking to purchase an updated video card. Question here from Frank, kind of unrelated to the topic, but is iClone 7 Motion Curve Editor separately available for people that have not bought the Pipeline Edition? I think the Motion Curve Editor is available in the Pro version. I don't think that you need the Pipeline version for the Motion Curve Editor. I'm like 95% sure there. Now, I don't think that's available until 7.1. It may not be available with launch, the Motion Curve Editor. I haven't heard a recent update on that. Have you heard anything yourself, Chris? Or
Actually, I have heard that you do require the pipeline, but I also heard that it could be sold separately as an add-on as well. So it will be sold separate as an add-on. So I don't know if it's going to be it's going to happen or not. Again, to be determined. But yeah, that's definitely and it's definitely 7.1, not at launch.
yeah, it won't be available for launch. I'm not sure why you need a pipeline. Anyways, all right, we'll move on. Since it's kind of unrelated and we're a little bit behind. So does iClone 7 use 3D models from the Renderosity site? Asking from Glenn. Definitely, you can import your Renderosity models into iClone using 3D Exchange. There's a lot of YouTube videos on our channel for that. All right, question from Adolf Navarro, one of my friends here. Can we change light color using semi-transparent materials like colored glass? What do you say to that, Chris?
If you're expecting refraction to be affected by that, it's not going to happen. You can change the color, but you cannot expect anything refracted to be affected by that.
Yeah, so that's the one main disadvantage is like light refraction through a transparent surface. For that, there's probably a workaround you can use. Maybe
you can fake it, but it's
yeah.
it's not going to happen by itself.
Yeah, you can fake it. There's probably a workaround for that. But as far as automatically going, it's not going to happen. Okay, so next one from Walter: does GI lighting affect characters' eyes?
Well, actually, there was it will affect it in its reflection when you use the specular bounds. You will see some reflection going on there. So, but yeah, you will get some effect to it from it.
Okay, yeah, that'd be some really detailed stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never actually tried that, so all right, good to know. Mark asks, what's the recommended amount of video memory to get the best render time using GI? I think we kind of talked about that a little bit. You have 12 gigabytes yourself.
So 8 gigs, I would recommend 8 gigs as a medium. You can use 4, but again, you're pushing your luck for GI. But 8 is a safe amount to use. I've heard people that with huge scenes, again, huge scenes that top their 12 gigs of memory. So it's really up to you how to optimize the scene as well. Remember, you don't have to have the whole scene in GI. You can use the volume only to where the camera can see, and that way you get the best possible without using all that extra memory that you're not seeing. So it's really up to you how you optimize the scene, and it is possible to use 8 gigs safely for your scene.
Yeah, so keep your volume focused on what the camera can actually see in the scene. You don't need it
exactly
inside that. I'm definitely going to have to replace my computer. I've just bought mine like less than 2 years ago. I'd say maybe 2 years ago. And
welcome to the tech world.
Yeah, every each updates. Goodness sakes. All right. Question from Jeff here. Once you have all the settings for a scene, can you save the settings as a preset to apply to other scenes?
Yes, you can. Especially for the lighting, you can save it as an atmosphere, and that will actually save all the IPL parameters. It will save your GI parameters, your light-emitting surfaces, anything that's lighting related. It will save it.
All right, so yeah, so if you don't know how to save atmospheres, you just go up to the, maybe you
Oh,
can quickly show us where you can save that for some people.
yeah. So over here and over there, atmospheres here. So these are your atmospheres. You can save it, of course, in custom. Just just go ahead and just press the scene and press the button plus, and you're good to go for atmospheres. Just go plus, and it will save everything that I have going on for lighting over here in there.
Right on. Okay, so yeah, 3D scene, custom tab, and then atmosphere, and then you have the little
Mm-hmm.
plus symbol there on the bottom
Yep.
left. That'll save all your light
Stage,
settings.
atmosphere. There we go, and like that. There you go.
Yeah, stage, yeah. All right, yeah, that's a really good question there, Jeff. Thanks. That's pretty
Mhm.
helpful, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. If let's say you have like a nice daytime sky with a bright sunshine and the right fill lights, it's a time saver. You don't have to do that again.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so question from let's see, Guy here is mentioning about the curve editor for the iClone 7. Again, likely at this point we're looking at a 7.1 release for the curve editor. That'll be out shortly after the launch, I believe, in the next few months after that. I can't really give you solid timeline on that, unfortunately. But yeah, the motion curve editor a little bit later after the launch for 7.1. But they're working really hard day and night to get that out. But a couple of things that still need to be worked out. So a few more questions here, and then we're going to call it a day. Tony asks, are there any changes in iClone 7 regarding lighting and particle use for 360 VR? 360 VR. I'm not haven't used that yet for the.
I haven't had the use for that yet. Not sure if there were problems with that or not, but I'm not sure how to answer that one because, again, I haven't done a lot with that myself. So
Yeah, I haven't used the 360 VR since I was actually launched with a little while before. I know that James Martin uses 360 VR quite a bit, but
I think if you have your scene light properly, I don't see why there would be any problems because it's basically just baking a large IBL into an image, a
yeah,
spherical image.
I'm
So
with you on that one. All right, let's see. Philip asks a question, can I use a new AMD video cards for rendering, or is it only CUDA cards right now?
you can use other video cards that are not NVIDIA. However, it's going to be a lot slower, a lot slower.
Yeah, it's not optimized for other video cards right now because it does use that NVIDIA technology as well.
Yes, it uses VXGI, so which is a CUDA technology
Yeah.
by NVIDIA. So
Yeah, so keep that in mind. NVIDIA is the best card to have with this particular technology for you guys out there. Examples. Okay, so Mark is asking to send a link from some of the example videos from this tutorial. We can probably send that off to you. Just maybe give us an email later on. We're not going to be providing any links at this moment. Example videos. So have you actually rendered anything out from this webinar, Chris? Or
not for this one. I had a whole bunch of images from the previous one actually. This one is mostly just to show off how the lighting works, not show off lit images.
okay. Yeah. Well, we'll have to kind of stay tuned to the YouTube channel, I think, Mark, for that, where you can contact Chris or I directly. Guy is asking about training DVDs available. So training DVDs, they normally come at least a few months after launch. So I wouldn't be expecting those until at least maybe end of this year, possibly earlier. But I don't really know. We haven't had confirmation on that yet. All right, so a couple of thank yous from Robert, and let's see. A couple of questions I can't really understand the English or the spelling here a little bit. But yeah, one question asking if Indigo is required anymore. I think we answered that earlier. Indigo, only if you're using photorealistic, if you require photorealistic refractive lighting inside of semi-transparent surfaces and stuff like that. Otherwise, iClone 7 should be able to fit the bill, and you can also there's a lot of workarounds to make a more realistic lighting as well, like the scenario that Adolf mentioned earlier with the light shining through the colored semi-transparent surface. You can get around with that with different methods.
Yeah, lots of tools to tweak lighting here. A lot of tools. This is really, really fantastic.
Yeah, probably the biggest improvement to iClone's visuals in a long time, I think ever, I would say. Just the insane amount of lighting parameters that you can use now, IBL, PBR, GI, and everything. Just they're all focused on visual, which is awesome. Thanks to the new technology we have, new video cards. Make sure you get your NVIDIA stocks. Yeah, I think we're pretty much good for that. If anyone has any further questions, again, you can email either me or Chris. I'm kai@reallusion.com. And we can get to your questions a little bit later on in private. We're kind of a little bit overtime, a lot overtime, about half an hour overtime on questions here. So we had a full house and a lot of questions.
I love this stuff, so
yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah, most people are still here as well. Awesome. So yeah, basically that's it for the webinar for today, guys. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you for
thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, for showing us all his lighting skills and giving us a little introduction to the technical aspect of lighting, GI lighting in iClone. And like I mentioned, we're going to have another one next Tuesday where we're going to revisit the PBR features of iClone, and Chris will be hosting that as well. And yeah,
lots of cool stuff there for sure. By the way, this scene you see over here, you can get it from Prop Masters as well. Very cool scene. It does not come with PBR textures, but it's a good training exercise to convert the textures to PBR after you check out the first webinar. So definitely check out the first webinar and use this model over here. You can get it there. It's super cheap. It's like 15 bucks, 17 bucks. So definitely worth for the practice.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't aware, Prop Masters is the store in the marketplace. And who's the developer for that model?
It's 3D Everything, I think.
Oh, 3D Everything. Okay, yeah. So you just published some new stuff. So check out 3D Everything in the marketplace store. And
it's called Roman Patio.
Roman Patio. Okay, good to know.
There you go.
All right, guys. So that's where we're going to end it. Thanks again to everyone, and hopefully you have a good rest of the evening or morning or going to sleep wherever you are in the world. And yeah, this will be available for recording. We're going to send you out the link as well. So make sure you take look for that and fill out the survey where you get the $10 gift certificate for the content store. And thanks so much to everyone, and I'll talk to you all later.
All right, guys. Good night, and thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, guys.